When
Yep. Let me just get this going. All right, Frank, I'm ready. I'm going to start recording whenever you're ready. Go ahead.
I'm good.
Good evening. Welcome to the Township of Hillsborough Board of Adjustment public meeting for Wednesday, October 7th, 2020, held remotely via electronic means. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America,
and to the
and
republic
to the republic for which it stands,
Stands one
one
nation.
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting will be
Is Chicky connected?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
this meeting will be conducted virtually. The public will be given an opportunity to participate remotely through Zoom by following the instructions listed on the agenda, which was posted on the township website. All documents pertaining to any applications on the agenda were available on the township website at least 10 days prior to this meeting. Board members, staff, and consultants will be participating remotely. Applicants will be presenting remotely and will identify themselves before testifying. This meeting has been duly advertised according to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, the Sunshine Law. Notice of the 2020 annual meeting schedule has been provided to the officially designated newspapers, the township clerk, and posted on the bulletin board at the township municipal complex. Additional notice has been provided to communicate that this meeting is being conducted according to the governor's executive orders and pursuant to Public Law 2020 C11, which allows for meetings to be conducted electronically. Tina, would you take the roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Sirachi absent, Mr. Basil absent, Ms. Erickson absent, Mr. Stamler,
Here,
Ms. Lilly,
I'm here.
Mr. Valchek,
Here.
Mr. Walmarker,
Here.
Ms. Haynes,
Here.
Chairman Herbert,
Here.
Mr. Gorman,
Present.
okay, Mr. Anderson,
I'm here.
Mr. Euro, you are here,
Here.
and then Fred Kinsler, and I am here.
Thank you.
Hey, Fred, would you briefly explain the technology being used tonight for the virtual meeting and how the public will be able to participate?
Sure, we're using Zoom, and the public will participate by either raising their hand or pressing *9 on their if they're dialed in on a phone line when it's open public, and they'll be allowed to speak. And that's how we'll proceed.
Very good, thank you. Okay,
Yep.
First thing on the agenda is consideration of meeting minutes. We have two meetings tonight, September 2nd, 2020. Any board discussion on those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, they pass. Next is September 16th, 2020. Any board discussion on those? Motion?
So moved.
Second? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, they're approved. Next, we have consideration of resolutions. We have two resolutions tonight. Daniel Chang, BA 19-20. Board discussion on that resolution.
Frank, just clarify who can vote on that one?
Yeah, Mark.
I have, you want me to?
Yeah, Tina.
What I have for Chang is, well, I have you, Ms. Haynes, I have Philomena, I have Janine, but she's not here, Jim Walmarker. And then we have a question about Frank and whether Mr. Herbert can vote on that.
The answer is Mr. Herbert would not. He is not on the prevailing side of that resolution.
So it's Miss Haynes, Miss Lilly, and Mr. Walmarker, it looks like.
In that case, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
I'll second it.
Tina, would you take a roll call, please?
Miss Haynes,
Yes.
Miss Lilly,
Yes,
and Mr. Walmarker.
Yes.
The next resolution for consideration is Prashant and Rikita Bakaru, BA 2002. Any board discussion on that resolution? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Okay, who can vote on that, Tina?
Mr. Herbert, Miss Haynes, Miss Lilly, and Mr. Walmarker can vote on that. So Mr. Herbert,
Yes.
Miss Haynes,
Yes.
Miss Lilly,
Yes,
Mr. Walmarker.
Yes.
Okay, next is Board of Adjustment business. Is there any business on the floor tonight?
Hey, Frank, you have a status on our proposals?
Same as last month,
which is,
same as last month. No,
So nothing- so nothing's
seriously,
been-
you know,
Nothing's been done.
the one that's making progress, I guess, is the one for the house, you know, the dwelling that would burn down. It could be replaced if they kept the same footprint of the house. And I think the rest of them are on the, over with the planning board at the master plan subcommittee.
All right, so we're still at 0. Thank you.
Okay, at this point, is there any business from the floor for Matt is not on the agenda? Ask Fred to open up the line so we can hear anybody in the public that wants to ask questions of the board or wants to speak to the board.
Sure. Is there anybody in the public who has a matter that's not on the agenda? If you do, please raise your hand. And as always, please state your name and address for the record. Chairman, seeing none, I think you can move forward.
Okay, close the line.
Hey, Frank, just one notion for about board business real quick that's now on the agenda. Eva Hewitt was serving with our department. She recently left our department for a different position. So I just want to let the board know that in the future, if there's correspondence to the board, just make sure I'm copied and so is Deborah, so that we can make sure that any communications can be adequately addressed. And also want to thank Eva for her service to the board at the same time.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, first public, go ahead. Somebody else say something? Okay, so the first public hearing tonight is Timco Family Associates, LP file BA 2001. Patrick, would you introduce that, please?
Yes, I'll introduce this, Mr. Chairman. I have a few comments I'll be making for the board's pleasure when I'm finished. First application tonight is for the Timco Family Associates LP, file number BA 20-01. Property formerly known as Block 198, Lot 2A. The applicant is seeking a preliminary and final major subdivision approval to create 3 lots. Block 183.06 Lot 1, otherwise known as 1324 Millstone River Road, that consists of 4.3 acres. It has a pre-existing 2-family dwelling. Block 198, Lot 2.01, which is a vacant property on Millstone River Road that consists of 19.79 acres. And Block 183.05, Lot 35, which is also vacant fronting on Hamilton Road, that consists of 11.71 acres. In addition to this application, the applicant is seeking a D use variance for all 3 lots for single family and the 2-family home. And additional C bulk variances for the existing lot in the 2-family house on the property. The property is located in the 05 Office Research Zoning District. Time of decision is 10/30/2020. This application was carried without further notice, but they did notice for the update the Zoom content from our September 2nd meeting. On that note, a couple of considerations from the board at this point. the board is essentially looking at 4 different requests here. The first is being subdivision, the next being the use variance and the bulk variances for the 2-family home. And then we're also looking at a use variance for a single-family home on each of the 2 vacant lots. It's at the board's, it's at the chairs and the board's discretion of how they want to vote. But seeing that there's many different layers to this, the board can elect to bifurcate this application or quadruplicate, technically in this case, the application to hear the subdivision first, vote on it, hear the 2-family, vote on it, and then vote on each of the single-family use variances separately. In addition, there's some additional information that's recently happened in this area of the township. As you know, as is known, the planning board recently took action where the golf course property on Rosebrook recently became a new zoning district by itself. This essentially carved out about 400 acres of the property and made it into a residential / golf course area. So that's no longer part of the 05 district. There's some potential implications on this is now that the zone is significantly smaller than originally was back when this application was filed. So any consideration for especially for the vacant parcels at this point for the variance, you may be dabbling a little bit into a de facto rezoning of a district. Mark,
Hey, Patrick,
okay, let me finish, please. Thank you. So Mark can go into more of the technical details and the legality behind that. It's always for the applicant to answer both the positive and negative criteria when coming to a use variance, and also demonstrate that it's consistent with the plans for the township, including the zoning district and the master plan.
Mark, John, did you want to say something? I'm going to pass it off to Mark.
yes, it's John Stamler. Patrick, I mean, we're just finding out about this new residential zone now, which I find a little disturbing. My question is this: does this new residential zone have a name? Is it Royce Brook Residential District? Does it have a name? Is it officially a new district? We're just finding out about this now that I find it rather odd. So is it officially on the books as a new residential zone or district?
Yes, it was voted on. It's going to be known as I'm sorry, I'm getting my notes here for a second.
Royce Brook Residential District, maybe? I don't know.
I apologize. I did have this available. I'm going through my note. The Roycebrook Plan Residential District.
Sorry, repeat that, Patrick?
The Roycebrook Plan Residential District.
And when did the township committee pass that ordinance?
It was essentially passed, I believe it was last month.
They do it in September in one of the meetings, okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah, well, it's funny, we were just hearing about this now at the meeting. Does this fall within that Mindle tract? Because there's a Mindle tract out there, right? Does this application fall within the Mindle tract?
You know, John, I think Mark's going to touch on these things in his talk, so could you hold that question to let Mark go through?
Yep. Okay, and just one other thing, because I did read something or whatever, but I think we should treat each use or a lot separately. But okay, thank you.
I think Mark's going to address that too. So go ahead, Mark. It's all yours.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I appreciate Mr. Gorman's introduction. In particular, I want to emphasize what this is in effect, we should say in reality, 4 different applications. I divide them only very slightly differently than Mr. Gorman did. I would suggest, and this is partly because of the practicality of voting, the issues involving the subdivision and the bulk variances, which I believe are directly related to the subdivision. These are matters that do not require an affirmative vote. And I think that they can be dealt with very quickly. Would like to speak to each of these 4 issues separately before the board considers them. But at the moment, when the board is going to do these things separately, I will speak to the subdivision and the bulk variance issues together. This is a matter which the applicant has represented occurred because of county action back in '97, if I recall correctly. Leaving aside the legality of how this was handled by the property owner and the county, there is a reality on the ground here. This was done for the purposes of realigning streets. The streets were not only proposed to be realigned, they have in fact been realigned. They're there, they're on the ground. This subdivision exists as a practicality, and it seems extraordinarily unlikely that anything can or would be done to change that reality. I don't think that the planning board or the Board of Adjustment could undo the subdivision because it would require the county to take out the roads. And I don't believe that there's any reason why the Board of Adjustment would have any inclination to do that. As I indicated before, I see the bulk variances for that lot as being directly related. Those bulk variances exist at least in part because of the subdivision itself, the way the subdivision was accomplished. Now, I said before that this was represented as having been accomplished in 1997 in the application itself, but I go further than that. Mr. Gorman has investigated this separately, and I have looked at the county records. Both Mr. Gorman and I can confirm that this is a reality. This was something that was accomplished by deeds between the applicant or the applicant's predecessor at least, and Somerset County. That being the case, I think this is the one part of the application that need not take any significant amount of the board's time. Indeed, I don't personally think that there's even any need for testimony from the applicant, because Mr. Gorman and I both can confirm the reality that this subdivision exists. Unless the board has some question about the bulk variances that go with it, or a concern that some condition should be attached to those bulk variances, my recommendation is that the board proceed immediately to discussion and vote. As I indicated, this is these 2 things, the subdivision and the bulk variances, can be accomplished without a concern about needing 5 affirmative votes.
Mark, at that point, if it's all right with Mr. Linus, I would move that a motion to approve what's already been in existence for quite a few years.
So both as to subdivision, Ms. Haynes, both as to subdivision and the requested bulk variances.
Correct. Yes.
I would second that.
Hey, Tina, would you take a vote, please? Roll call, please.
Okay, Mr. Stamler,
Yes.
Ms. Salili,
yes,
Mr. Valchek,
Yes.
Mr. Walmarker,
Yes.
Ms. Haynes,
Yes.
Chairman Herbert.
Yes, I'm very glad we voted yes. I didn't want to be the one to tell the county to rip out their roads from the Timko property, so thank
How about telling my client to rip out the roads? Yeah.
Presume.
you can keep them, I guess, if they wanted. Okay,
All right, if I might, Mr. Chairman, I do agree with the procedure that's been outlined by Mr. Gorman and Mr. Anderson. I think the case is clear, and we're looking for confirmation and just have received the confirmation of what actually exists in the ground, which is a subdivision that was created a long time ago. We just need to perfect it, and we'd like to perfect it by deed. Is that okay with Mr. Anderson?
Mr. Linus and I have had some communication about this. This is something of a technicality. It is, as I see it, technically a major subdivision because it was accomplished through addition of new streets. And a major subdivision would normally have to be perfected by plat. which of course will be an expense, perhaps a significant expense to the applicant. Again, Mr. Lindis and I have had some communication. I think it is sufficient for the board to acknowledge in its resolution that this is de facto, it's done. The board is not in effect granting the subdivision, it is acknowledging the subdivision. And I would recommend that the resolution include that the applicant can perfect that by deed.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay,
Do
so
we have a
what-
motion on that?
Well, we had, wasn't that the motion, wasn't that included in the motion we just took?
No.
That's my recommendation, and that's what I will include in the form of resolution that I provided the board.
Should we have another vote on that?
I don't think we need one, right? We
don't think we
voted
do.
yes, and it'll
Yeah.
be in the resolution.
Right,
Linus feels that it's necessary. Certainly, I have no objection to it. I don't think it's necessary, but
I'm okay with that.
good, okay.
Okay.
So,
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We now proceed to the request for a D1 variance for the existing two-family dwelling.
Good.
By way of background, the existing non-conforming two-family dwelling has existed since sometime back in 64, 65 for a period of 55 years. It likely predates the ordinance. The ordinance changed in 1965, rezoning the property from residential use, two-family residential use, to then industrial use. It is now zoned 05, and we're not part of this Royce Brook situation where we are 05 and we remain 05 as we stand here today. It has also been taxed and continues to be taxed as a two-family dwelling by the municipality. And we intend to prove that there's D-variance support for the D-variance for the existing two-family structure that's been there for 55 years. I have with me tonight Carol Noyes, formerly Carol Timko, who bring the board up to date as to the history of the property and the facts that surround the two-family dwelling that's been in existence since 1964. I also hope Mr. O'Brien's here. I didn't see Mr. O'Brien. Are you here, Mr. O'Brien?
Yes, he's here.
Okay. And he would offer the planning testimony in support for that variance. We would then proceed. We would then ask for a vote as indicated by Mr. Anderson and the procedure to be followed on the two-family, and then proceed with testimony on the other two lots, the single-family lots.
that's
So if
good.
that procedure is acceptable to the chair and the board, I'd like to introduce Carol Noyes.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to make some comments about this application. First of all, to start with the last thing mentioned by Mr. Linus, he is certainly aware of the fact that there are 6 available voting members. This is a use variance which will require 5 affirmative votes. Not a decision that I think he needs to make at the moment, but before a vote is taken, I think that we need to ask the applicant whether it's prepared to take a vote with only 6 members. As I've discussed with this board before, I do not find anything in the law that precludes the board from taking a vote, even on a D variance, with only 6 available members. Indeed, I don't see anything directly in the law that precludes that with only 5 members, or ironically enough, with 4 members, out of which, of course, you couldn't get 5 affirmative votes. On the other hand, it has always been my recommendation to boards, this board and other boards, that they should consider favorably any request by an applicant to carry a vote so that 6 people can be qualified to vote. Now-
Yes, Mr. Anderson, I did have the opportunity to discuss with my client earlier this evening the possibilities of a 6-member board voting or a 5-member board voting. And we're prepared to proceed with the D1 variance, but would reserve our right to defer the vote until a 7th member would have the opportunity to read the transcript and take the vote at that time. So we have a full vote.
This is, of course, I'm sure the board members know this is a common request. And it is, in my mind, in the discretion of the board. But again, I've always recommended that boards should exercise that discretion favorably to the applicant. Now, the application itself is for a use variance for the use of an existing structure as a 2-family home. This is not an application for a certification of pre-existing non-conforming use. So the focus of the board is not and should not be on how long this has been used, because that's relevant to, might be relevant to question of pre-existing non-conforming use, but this is strictly a use variance. Question before the board is, under the current circumstances, is it appropriate to grant a use variance for two-family use for this particular residence? Mr. Linus mentioned the question of how the property has been taxed. I emphasize to the board that it's not a relevant matter. Question of taxation is based on, it's supposed to be based on actual use, not necessarily legal use. So the fact that the property has been taxed as a two-family should not enter into the board's deliberation on whether a use variance should be granted. There is one, I think, limited area in which I think it is appropriate, if the board chooses, to consider the length of time that this may have been actively used as a two-family residence. And that is to the issue of whether the property is suitable or particularly suited to the use, something which I'm sure the applicant's planner will get in. In total regard, I think that if the property has been openly and actively used in recent times, and I mean, maybe even just the last couple of years, as a two-family home, and there has been no issue over that, that hasn't presented any issue within the township, I think that it is a consideration that the board is entitled to use in deciding whether the property is particularly suited. But otherwise, the length of time that this may have been used for two-family and how it's been taxed are not relevant considerations for the board.
All right, can we proceed, Mr.
Go
Chairman?
ahead. Yes, Mr. Lenz, go ahead.
All right, Carol, you want to, I think you've already submitted an affidavit of testimony and you're prepared to testify under oath this evening. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mark, do you need to swear her in at this point?
We do ask that the reporter swear in the witnesses individually.
Tina?
Yes. Carol, can you raise your right hand, please?
Yes,
Is your right hand raised?
yes,
Do you solemnly swear testimony you're about to give this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes,
Thank you. Please state and spell your name for the record.
sure. My name is Caroline, Caroline. Last name Noyes, Noyes.
Okay, Caroline, your former maiden name was Caroline Timko, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. What is your relationship to Timko Family Associates?
I am the managing partner.
Okay, and the partnership consists of who?
Partnerships consists of myself and two sisters.
Okay. Would you bring the board and the public who was ever participating with a background on the property? And I'm specifically directing you to what we're describing as the two-family property.
Yes. Let me just give you a history. In 1964, my parents, Michael and Carol Timko, purchased a 40-acre tract of land on Millstone River Road. They built a side-by-side two-family ranch home on the land, and this home was originally built and was always intended to be used as a two-family home and was operated as such. By way of example, the US Post Office delivers mail here to two separate addresses. Further, the home was designed and constructed and still exists with entirely separate sets of two separate kitchens, two separate electric meters, two separate gas meters, two separate water heaters, two separate furnaces, and two separate laundry hookups. The sides were physically separated from each other on both the main levels and the basement levels. My family lived in this home and rented out one side. My father, Michael Timko, passed away in 1992, and subsequently in 1994, for estate planning purposes and at our estate attorney's advice, my mother and sisters and myself established this family limited partnership, which is Timko Family Associates. This property was placed in this partnership, and I've been the managing partner since 1994. In 2018, my mother passed away, and Timco Family Associates, as I said, now consists of myself and 2 sisters. In 1998, Somerset County realigned the roads through our property and obviously created these 3 physically separate parcels. At that time, Hillsborough Township created 3 separate tax lots, and recently, our partnership decided to sell the home, at which time we discovered, much to our surprise, that Somerset County had not completed the formal subdivision.
And
So
that's
tonight-
already been confirmed tonight by the board.
Right, exactly. That's been confirmed, correct.
Okay,
Thanks, and thank you.
I have no further questions of this witness.
Okay, at this point, I have a motion to open public. Motion to open public.
Motion to open public.
Second,
Second.
those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Carries. Okay, at this point, we'll open the public line for questions for this witness. So Fred, would you open the line and see if there's anybody on the public line that has questions for this witness for her testimony?
Sure. Sure. If anybody in the public has a question for this witness, please raise your hand. Seeing none, Frank, I think you can proceed, Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. O'Brien, Kevin? Kevin, where are you? You said you were here before.
He was
He's
here.
muted.
He is. There you go.
Good evening.
Hi,
Right,
Mr. O'Brien. Can you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, he's ready for you.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, would you give the board and members of the public who are participating the benefit of your background, qualifications, and experience?
Certainly. I have a graduate degree from the New Jersey Institute of Technology. I have taught planning and zoning at Rutgers with the Center for Local Government Services, along with the New Jersey State League of Municipalities. I've appeared before over 250 boards in this state, ranging from Ocean and Mercer counties to the New York border. I work for half a dozen communities, and I do private planning as well. I am published.
We can accept this qualification.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, as a matter of fact, you've testified before this board on other occasions, is that correct?
I have had that pleasure, yes.
Okay, and in your capacity as a licensed professional planner, are you familiar with the Hills Road?
Lennis, let me point out, nobody said that he holds a current license. I'm sure he does, but I would like it on the record.
Kevin, do
thank
you
you,
still hold your
Counselor.
current license?
Counselor, thank you. My license is extant and it is in good, in honorable shape.
Thank God. All right.
To be
In
a
your capacity as a currently licensed professional planner, are you familiar with the Hillsborough Township Land Development Ordinances and the MLUL?
Yes.
Okay. Would you care to take the board through an analysis of your planning and zoning testimony as it relates to the 2-family dwelling that we're proposing for a use variance?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Mr. Linus. This evening, the applicant is seeking a D1 use variance to allow an existing 2-family building to continue. And we've already taken care of the bulk conditions with the subdivision motion, so I will not go into those. There are a number of unique aspects to this application. This application fixes a mistake by the County of Somerset over 20 years ago when the county split the existing property into 3 parts to accommodate new roadways: Somerset Courthouse Road and Hamilton Road. In 2000, the township renumbered the 3 lots with new block and lot numbers and did indeed send tax bills to each of the 3 new lots. The subdivision was created. Everyone went on their merry way on the new roads and lived in the existing home as the Timcos have since 1964. Back then it was owned R1 residential agricultural. That's when the 2-family was built in 1964. We do have evidence through a deed and through a survey of the property. Mr. Ford has those documents available should the board wish to see them. You've heard the testimony of Ms. Timko, who has described the history of the property since 1964. In comparison to the existing lot, which will not change as a result of this application, everything remains exactly as it is. The current O5 zone allows office buildings, research laboratories, fiduciary institutions, hospitals, light manufacturing, and restaurants. Farms and agriculture are also permitted uses. The OR zone allows 40 feet in height and 50% impervious lot coverage. The OR uses and standards are far more intense than the existing two-family housing. Farms are an allowed use, which are much less intensive uses than a research laboratory or an office building. The property is surrounded by residential uses to the north and east, many of those houses dating to the 1950s. South is Somerset County Improvement Authority open land, west is open land, and northwest is the golf course. The Environmental Commission reviewed this application and reported that the commission does not have an issue with the use variance for the two-family house. The report did go on to note environmental concerns about future development and encouraged the board to ensure that all environmental regulations were addressed. As a two-family use and as a farm, there have been no environmental constraints on this property. And again, I do wish to note that there is no physical change proposed to this property. The neighborhood will remain exactly as it is. The master plan of the township does have a number of items that address this application. First, the 1996 master plan goals and objectives on page 6 state provide a balance of land uses that includes agriculture, recreation, employment, residential, and public service. Goes on to say, provide housing types to serve all ages, economic segments, and family sizes according to state law and consistent with available service facilities, schools, and infrastructure. The 2002 master plan reexamination on page 7 states, provide a future land use pattern that includes agriculture, recreation, employment, residential, public services, and a safe and healthful environment. Page 9 goes on to say, provide housing types to serve all ages, economic segments, and family sizes according to state law and consistent with available service facilities, schools, and infrastructures. The 2005 master plan amendment repeats these goals on page 35. So to summarize, these goals for development have been consistent since 1996, providing a balance of land uses, a variety of housing to meet all types of needs. And this application supports these goals by providing for different types of housing to meet the needs of residents. And the master plan supports the current agricultural use and encourages housing. In referring to the municipal land use law, where the goals of zoning are put in section 40:55D-2, where the purposes of zoning are listed. A, to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in this state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. And this subdivision promotes, well, the subdivision and the two-family home, which is subsequent to that, promotes the general welfare by providing that much needed roadway back between 1997 and 2000. Item C, to provide adequate light, air, and open space. Continuing the current two-family and farm use will preserve open space. As I've noted, the OR zone would allow 50% of impervious cover. And as you've seen from the application, there's very little impervious cover besides the house and the driveway, and the rest is farmland and open space. Item D, ensure that the development of individual municipalities did not conflict with the development and general welfare of neighboring communities, the county, and the state as a whole. And the transportation network created back in 2000 benefited Hillsborough, adjoining municipalities, and the county. Item G, provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential uses, and open space. And this proposal does provide residential, agricultural, and open space in a place that is particularly suited for it because it has been in existence since 1964. Item H, to encourage the location and design of transportation routes which will promote the free flow of traffic while discouraging location of such facilities and routes which result in congestion or blight. The opening of the new roads in 2000, which led to this application, promoted the free flow of traffic on the county roadway network. And lastly, item I, to promote a desirable visual environment. And this existing home will remain as it is. So there will be no change to the property, no change to the neighborhood, no change to the streetscape. Those existing residences on the east side of the roadway will continue to see a home and a farm, not a research laboratory or an office building. This application is consistent with those passages from the municipal land use law. One of the other prongs that we've got to meet for a D1 use variance is to show whether or not this application will have any negative impacts. I cannot identify any negative impacts from this application. I believe this application will be a positive for the neighborhood by eliminating the possibility of large-scale intensive commercial development that would completely change the character of the neighborhood while maintaining the existing pattern of development. I'd like to summarize by stating that, as I've just said, the use variance has to meet a three-pronged burden of proof. First, there are special reasons, which are based in the municipal land use law, and this application supports those goals. Items A, C, D, G, H, and I. The positive criteria are met by showing that the application can be reconciled with the master plan. This application supports the master plan goals of providing housing to meet the needs of all segments of the population at all family sizes by continuing the two-family house as it is, and the proposed use is particularly suited for this location based upon its longevity. The permitted large-scale commercial uses of the O5 zone are not suitable for this location. Offices, laboratories, and hospitals have been consolidating for the last 20 years, with the trend increasing dramatically after the Great Recession. Today, in the age of COVID-19, the market for new offices, labs, hospitals, and manufacturing is in question. And I think our economy will be sorting through that question for quite a while. The negative impact are met in this proposal. There will be no negative impact on nearby homes of the area. And just to remind the board, this whole application came about because of the county reconfiguration of the area roads to create a more efficient transportation network and meet the needs of township and area residents. In conclusion, I believe that this application can be granted without substantial detriment of the public good and without substantial impairment of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. I welcome any questions.
Frank, I have a question. Mr. O'Brien, you kept referring to a farm use, and I'm kind of confused. We're talking about a little over a 4-acre piece. Is there a barn and are there fields on this 4 acres?
Yes, there are fields that is currently being farmed for corn.
And
I'm sorry,
does it,
Can I have some background?
All right, is that you, Carol?
No,
No, she's on mute.
this is Fred. If everybody can mute your line if you're not speaking at the moment, we can figure out who it is. Thank you. Thank you, Tina.
okay, is that it?
Okay, Mr. O'Brien, can you repeat your question, your answer, please?
I did not hear a question. I'm terribly sorry.
Okay, my question, we were talking about the farm use. You said that part of it is being farmed on this 4 acres. Has it, how much of it has been farm qualified for tax purposes? Just out of curiosity.
I would have to refer that question to our site engineer, who has not testified as yet. I apologize.
Well, it would be on the tax bill, but I'm just curious.
I think, Ms. Haynes, that might be appropriately answered by Carol Noyes. Carol, are you there still?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
You want to explain you want to answer that question, please?
I believe there's a small piece.
Let's
Not,
Let's finish up with this questioning and bring that, so we don't have two witnesses going at the same time.
Okay, hold your answer for a minute then.
Okay.
And while I personally have no problem with the two-family house, but you kept referring back, Mr. O'Brien, to, you know, the roads and so on, which really doesn't affect the use of the house. So I don't know how that factors in to the argument pro or con for this particular property. I mean, I think you've laid out the case that, you know, it's been designed as two-family, it's been used as a two-family, but I was just curious about the farm use on a relatively small lot. So if that can be answered by Ms. Noyes, that would be great.
Any other questions from board members? I guess I had two questions. In your opinion, professional opinion, do you think a variance can be granted without substantially impairing the zone plan and the master plan?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay. And as far as you know, has this been, this has been a two-family house for a long time, has that caused any problems in the neighborhood being a two-family house?
Actually, it complements the other homes, which are a single family, but is a far less intensive use than what is allowed there. The research lab, the hospital, the office building. I think a two-family use is much more in keeping with the neighborhood than a conforming use.
Okay. Any more questions from any other board members? Patrick, do you have any questions? Or
Yeah, just a couple of things just to reiterate as a part of this. Of course, we're looking at the two-family home here. Mr. O'Brien does make up some good points, but at one point in time, we have to remember that the township felt it was appropriate for the zone to be a commercial zone at one point. And it used to be a residential zone, then went to a commercial zone. Of course, you can design buildings and other structures that, you know, still allow for the free for light air and such, and you can make it visually comparable at the same time. And some of the residential uses in that are surround these properties are actually could be considered in the R residential zone to begin with, but there no real argument for that against the application.
okay. Okay, at this point, we'll ask questions from the public. Fred, would you open up the line?
Sure. Does anybody on the public have any questions for this witness? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, Chairman, you can proceed.
Okay, Mr. Lennis.
All right, Carol, do you want to respond to Ms. Haynes' question regarding farm use? What type of farm use, if any, has been used on this particular lot?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the question, as I understand it from Ms. Haynes, was whether it's farmland assessed. I can advise the board that farmland assessment requires a minimum of 5 acres.
And I agree with that.
Yeah. That's why I'm wondering what's on the tax bill. I mean, you know, it's not terribly pertinent to the two-family issue, but since Mr. O'Brien kept referring to it as agricultural use, I'm just curious.
All right, Carol, you're not, the lot, you acknowledge that the lot is not farmland assessed.
Correct. The
But there
land
any
is
type
not
of farming going on?
And there is a small piece on the back of the land that the farmer does farm because he farms the other two pieces as well, but the land is not farmland assessed. The two-family home is taxed as a home, correct. And can I also say too that the land was originally when Route 95 was supposed to come through. And that's why, you know, it was, I think the zones had changed a long time ago, but, you know, obviously there's no Route 95.
All right, that concludes the applicant's presentation on the second phase of this particular application, which is seeking a D1 use variance for the existing two-family structure. I think that, and I just got a text from my client indicating that we're prepared to take a vote with the 6 board members tonight. By way of summation, if I will, it's very clear. It was really close. I mean, we dug and we dug. The house was built in 1964, 65. The zoning changed in 1965. So it was real close to a certification of a non-conforming use. However, since we could not establish that, we did not present any proofs or any attempt to make this a certification of a non-conforming use. So we decided to go the D1 use variance. And I think the testimony of both Ms. Noyes and the planning testimony submitted by Mr. O'Brien support that. I think that the board can, within its discretion, grant the D1 use variance for a use that has existed for 55 years on this particular lot and will not have any substantial detrimental impact on the neighborhood plan and scheme. There's been no complaints whatsoever with respect to the use of the property. And Mr. O'Brien, I think, successfully pointed out the consistency with portions of the master plan and no negative detriment as a result, the second prong of the negative criteria. So I think when the board views the testimony as a whole, I think the board can, within its discretion, grant this use variance so that Ms. Noyes and the Timko Family Associates can now market the property and sell it. And that's how we got here, marketing the property and selling it. And the one thing that I think is crystal clear, that particular 4-acre lot, and I think Mr. O'Brien emphasized that, it is not conducive to any use in the 05 zone. So I respectfully request that the board consider in their discretion and vote tonight to approve the D1 use variance for the 2-family structure on that lot.
Thank you. Before we go to the board, I just have to open for public comment. Fred, would you open the line to see if there's any public comment on this?
Sure. Anybody from the public would like to comment on this application, please raise your hand. Seeing none, Chairman, you may proceed.
Okay, open for board discussion on this.
I'll make, oh, I'm sorry. Mark, do you want to?
No, go ahead, Chicky, it was me, John.
I was going to say, I certainly have no problem with the 2-family. I found part of Mr. O'Brien's testimony about the roads and the new roads and stuff kind of irrelevant to the 2-family issue. But I would make a motion that we approve it as a 2-family. Did we get any engineering reports or anything that has to be, Patrick, anything that we should include in a motion of approval? Patrick?
Yep. My apologies, I had to unmute. No, the only thing that would really affect this property at the moment is the bulk variance as part of the subdivision, which was already approved. So that's already taken care of. There's no further development being proposed on the lot at this time. Myself and Mr. Linus went over this property extensively, and then again with Mr. Anderson defining the deed work. Nothing else to add. Bob Euro, do you have anything to add?
No, I do not.
With
Okay,
that
with
said,
that-
it's John Stamler. I'll second Chicky's motion.
Okay, my input is that I think that, this property is appropriate for the 2-family house. It's not appropriate for the office and other use, so it's a good use for that property. Okay, Tina, would you take a roll call, please?
Yeah. Mr. Stamler,
Yes.
Miss Salili,
Phil,
You're muted.
Sorry. Yes.
okay, Mr. Valchak,
Yes.
Mr. Walmarker,
Yes.
Ms. Haynes,
yes.
Mr. Herbert.
Yes.
Chairman Herbert, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Mark, do you want to, as we move on, do you want to comment or go right to Mr.?
I would like
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
comment on the remaining 2. First of all, let me emphasize that while these request the same relief, they make requests for 2 separate lots. I think there's a temptation perhaps to say, well, this is the same thing. They ought to be heard together. I think the board is obliged to resist that temptation. These are in fact separate applications. The fact that a use variance might be appropriate for one does not imply that it is appropriate for the other. indeed, for reasons which I've outlined in a memo to the board, the contrary may be true. That is, the approval of one may make it more difficult or more appropriate that the board not consider it for the other. I think these things must stand alone. The proofs have to stand alone. Not to suggest that the board should or should not grant either one, but I think the proofs for each lot have to be addressed independently.
It's John Stamler with a question. Frank, I know the applications for the 05 zone. Are we still proceeding, calling this the 05 zone?
Yes, this is still the, you want to go over that again, Mark? What's?
Yeah, please, I think it was confusing. We are still the 05 zone. We have nothing to do with this Roycebrook residential zone.
And so basically, the golf course was included in the 05 zone. It was taken out. So the 05 zone, as I understand it, you can correct me, Patrick, is one small property on the north side, this property, and the, was it the Mendel property, which is a.
Yes, a portion of the Mendel property. So everything we're seeing tonight is still in the 05 Office Research District.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, try to put in some context the remarks that Mr. Gorman made. As I have indicated in the past to the board has the power to grant variances for individual pieces of property. The board does not have the power, does not have the right to zone, whether that be directly or indirectly. So the size of the zone and the impact of a change by variance on the zone is a relevant factor in deciding whether a grant of this variance would be within the board's power as a grant of a variance or beyond the board's power as effectively a rezoning. There is no bright line test for that. I can't tell you that the statute certainly doesn't say so. The case law does not say, well, if it's more than so many acres, that's a rezoning. There is no such bright line rule. But the rule still stands clearly that the board is not entitled to do something which is a de facto rezoning. That raises questions in two regards, as I see it, for each of these properties. One is the issue that Mr. Gorman addressed, that is the size of the zone and the impact of, in essence, removing one or both of these lots from that zone, how it would impact the zone as a whole. The other issue having to do with the potential of rezoning is that these are, and I don't want to use words too cavalierly, but these are in essence sort of theoretical or hypothetical variances. That is, the applicant is not presenting the board with a specific plan to use either of these lots as a single family residence. They are asking simply that, and again, I don't want to use conclusory words that mislead the board, but in a certain respect, they are simply asking for a change in the zone, or at least a change in what's permitted on these properties. And what they're asking is that the use on these properties be changed from what is permitted under the zone to what was previously permitted, but the zone was intentionally changed by the township. So both of those issues deal with the board's right and power to grant something in the guise of a variance, which may in fact go beyond that into an effective rezoning.
All right, if I might comment on that, Mr. Anderson, I would like to make the board aware of the fact that there is something called the time of application rule. And as I understand the time of application rule, that once the application has been deemed complete, then everything is set with respect to that particular application. So the point I am raising is that at the time that this application was deemed complete, this rezoning of the other property was not on the table, was not approved. And I think the board has to treat this as a traditional D1 use variance. Having said that, we're prepared to proceed to prove the D1 use variance for both lots tonight.
Okay, your time.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Linus and I may have some difference in interpreting the time of application rule. Certainly, Mr. Linus is correct that there is a time of application rule. This is specifically part of the current New Jersey law, but that has to do with the fact that the zoning on an individual property cannot be effectively changed during the course of an application. This issue is not the question of the township having changed the zoning on this property. And I think that the time of application rule does not extend to a change in other properties within the zone.
It may not even have a bearing on this application at all, right?
That's correct.
But you know what, Frank, back to the original question, I would urge that we do one lot at a time. We separate them and Mr. Linus can choose which lot he would like to do the presentation on first.
I do agree that I believe that it is essential that the board do that. And I certainly agree with Ms. Haynes that it's entirely up to the applicant which one they want to proceed with first.
Okay, I'm going to defer to Mr. O'Brien. Kevin, from a planning and zoning perspective, if you can, pick whichever lot you think is more appropriate for a D1 use variance, although our application is for both lots being appropriate for a D1 use variance. So you think you're able to do that?
I would prefer if the chairman flipped a coin because the testimony is going to be the same for both. The justifications are the same for both. And I fear I'm going to be repetitive to the board, but this is the path that has been laid out.
I don't want to be repetitive, but I do want to emphasize to the applicant and to Mr. O'Brien that if a use variance is granted on one, I think it necessarily has an effect on the other.
And I see us doing two votes, two motions at the end, but since the testimony is going to be the same, we don't want to sit here unless Fred can video everything and play it back to us.
Yeah, I agree on that.
I agree on that too, Frank. I would prefer not to have to hear the same thing twice.
Right.
Me too. I think everybody's on the same boat on that one. And finally, we're going to introduce Mike Ford because Mike, after Kevin's testimony, will go through the reports that may affect the D1 decision for both lots.
Okay, Mark.
So Kevin, you want to, all right, Kevin, you have been under oath and you're still under oath. Is that correct?
Wait a minute, time out. Mark's trying to say something. He's not coming through.
Oh,
Must respectfully disagree. I think the law requires these things to be done separately. If Mr. O'Brien says that he would give exactly the same testimony, so be it. And I think that it's not necessary to repeat it. But I think necessarily the grant of one has an effect on the propriety of granting the other. And I think that issue has to be addressed. And I don't think there's any way to do that except to do them one at a time.
Are we being stopped from presenting the case or?
No, it's present the case on one lot. We got to.
You want the, essentially, do you want to start with the lot that has 19 acres or the lot with 11 acres?
Okay, flip the coin, the 11-acre one.
Okay, Kevin, you're on. I understand, Mr. O'Brien, that you remain under oath. Do you understand that?
I do.
Okay. Now we're focusing in on one of the lots. You want to identify the lot we're focusing in on for the board's edification and then proceed with your testimony.
Yes, this is block 198, lot 201. As the chair just pointed out, this is the lot that is 19 acres in size.
Okay.
19.1 acres, excuse me.
Okay,
So,
Kevin,
right, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
proceed with your testimony.
Thank you very much. So we are seeking a D1 use variance to allow a single-family home to be built on this very large lot, which is currently farmed land as well as farmland assessed. The original 40-acre property was owned R1 residential agricultural in 1964 when the Timcos bought it and predated the 05 zone designation. Ms. Timko, Ms. Noyes pointed out a very interesting item a few moments ago, that when I-95 or the Somerset Middlesex Freeway was supposed to go through, it appeared as though that this new designation, first the IND and then the 05, were perhaps, I do not know the governing body intent, but it seems logical to put the two together, that they were considering far different uses in this area with an interstate highway coming through. Currently, the lot is farmland assessed, corn is grown, and this is a permitted use currently. The 05 zone allows office buildings, research laboratories, fiduciary institutions, hospitals. Farms and agriculture are permitted uses. The OR zone allows 40 feet in height and 50% impervious surface coverage. The vacant lot does not have public water or sewer, making it less attractive for a conforming use. The OR uses and standards are far more intense than the proposed single-family housing. Farms are much less intensive uses. The farm can continue as it is, and we are requesting the addition of a single-family home. And over the course of 19.1 acres, that home can be quite shielded, buffered from the adjoining roadways, so that there would be no impact upon surrounding uses. The property is surrounded by residential to the north and east, many of those houses dating to the 1950s. South is open land from the Improvement Authority, and west is also open land, and northwest is the golf course. It's important to note that there will be one physical change to this lot in this neighborhood as a result of this application. The farm will remain as it is, except a single-family house can be placed there. This type of use is one that has proven popular in several places. It is certainly going to make for a very remote type of home, and there is a market for this type of use, this type of home. And of course, any new residence that is built is going to have to conform to today's construction codes, which mean a safer and more efficient home. The master plan, dating back to 1996, continuing to 2002 and 2005, repeat a number of goals. And these are the goals for development have been consistent since 1996, providing a balance of land uses and a variety of housing to meet all types of needs. This application supports these goals by providing for different types of housing to meet the needs of Hillsborough residents, and the master plan supports the current agricultural use and encourages housing. This application meets those goals by continuing the agricultural use while providing for a single-family residence on the lot. This application is supported from the purposes of municipal land use law found in New Jersey statutes 40:55D-2, where the purposes of zoning are listed. A, encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in this state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. And public health is promoted by placing new construction code conforming buildings here. The general welfare is also promoted by keeping this as a farm. Currently, it's assessed farmland, and that certainly promotes the general welfare of keeping farmland in the state of New Jersey. Item B in the MLUL, secure safety from fire, flood, panic, and other natural and man-made disasters. And this meets that goal by providing new housing that meets all current safety standards. Item C, to provide adequate light, air, and open space. Development on the overly large vacant tracts will provide lot areas far in excess of what is required, preserving open space. Item G, provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of agriculture and residential uses and open space. And I believe this proposal will provide residential, agricultural, and open space in a place that is particularly suited for it, since it has been farmed since 1964. Lastly, item I, promote a desirable visual environment, and the farm parcel will remain the same, as I say, at 19.1 acres. The only visible change here would be a single-family home, which could be quite recessed from the roadway and perhaps not visible. In terms of the negative
Mr. O'Brien, I have a question. You're talking about farmland and you know, how important it is. Is the owner proposing to either put this in farmland preservation or put an agricultural easement on, you know, all but, let's say, 2 of the acres where a residence would go?
I would have to defer that question to our attorney and our applicant.
Because I mean, I don't think you can keep talking about, you know, farmland unless, you know, the intent is to keep it in farmland going forward and not have it change into more than one house or so on. So, I mean, I'm very interested if this is going to include an agricultural easement as part of this application.
All right,
Well, let me point out, Ms. Haynes,
if I understand, excuse me, if I understand, Ms. Haynes, you're talking about a farmette type lot?
I'm talking about an agricultural easement on, let's say, you know, if it's 19 acres on 17 of the acres. So that it will remain as farmland and not suddenly, you know, come back in a while and want more houses or some other use.
Well, I would point out that this 19-acre site, should you approve this application, will be allowed 1 single-family residence. I don't see many other types of uses going here that would be allowed. Agricultural is allowed, the single family is allowed. What else would a single family home do with this property but to farm it as it currently is?
They could come back in and ask for further subdivisions.
And ma'am, we have no control over what a future owner may or may not do. And that would be entirely within the parameters of your board or the planning board to approve or not.
But what I'm asking you is would you put an agricultural easement on this property?
Back to Mr. Linus.
Well, obviously, I have not yet discussed that with my client. And normally, if we were doing this live, I would ask for a brief recess and I'd talk to my client regarding that issue. I don't have the authority at this point to commit the client to such a situation. Might I suggest that we proceed with the application and perhaps not vote on the application tonight and give us an opportunity to come back at a later date to address that issue, as well as the issue raised by Mr. Anderson and Mr. Gorman, which is the impact, if any, of the rezoning of neighboring property.
Mr. Chairman, if the question is whether Mr. Linus is being disadvantaged by the fact that this is a virtual meeting.
I'm sorry,
I do-
Mr. Anderson, you were gone for a minute there.
You're breaking up a little bit, Mark.
Somehow I didn't feel I was gone, but
No,
these things happen.
you're breaking up. Your voice is breaking up a little bit.
All right. I don't know why I'm not having any difficulty here. Is that continuing?
That was good just then, yes.
Well, let me continue. Mr. Linus, I think, is suggesting that there is some disadvantage to him and his client in this being a virtual meeting. He can't ask his client privately. And I think that it would make sense, if it makes sense to the chairman and the board, to give Mr. Linus the opportunity to do exactly what he would do if this were a live meeting. I presume he'd get on the telephone, have a private conversation quickly with his client, and take a 5-minute break. If the board is to do that, I have written down a question similar to that of Ms. Haynes, which you might also want to discuss at the same time, which is whether the applicant would agree to a condition for no further subdivision.
I'm perfectly comfortable doing that. I have her phone number and I could give her a call.
Okay.
I would suggest-
Chairman, this is Fred Kinsler. We've done this in other meetings, just to give you some information where everybody can mute themselves. We'll keep we'll keep the call, the meeting going, but everybody mutes themselves, and the applicant and Mr. Linus can call his client, and everybody mutes, and we come back at an unadjourned time.
Okay, so why don't we all mute ourselves and come back in, say, 10 minutes?
All right, Carol, I'm going to call you. Once we get into this break, I will call you, okay? You there, Carol?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Yep, I'm here. I have my phone.
Okay,
Go in another room so we don't hear you.
okay.
I'll make sure everybody's muted also, Chairman.
Okay, back in 8:25.
Okay.
You okay, Tina?
Yep.
All right.
I
See you,
know, right?
talk
I'm
to you in a
like,
few minutes.
my hands are killing me.
Unbelievable.
I know.
I'll talk to you in a bit.
Okay.
Are we back on yet?
I am. This is Phil.
Hi,
Hi,
how
Mr.
are you?
Linus. It's Fred Kinsler, IT. I don't see the chairman back, so we'll just give it I have 8:23. He said 8:25, so
That's
we'll
right.
give it a
I'm
couple
letting
minutes.
you too. Thank you.
You're welcome. No problem.
Good we got. It's 8:24. I asked everybody back at 8:25, so. Jim, you there? Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think it might be prudent to take a quick roll call coming off of
Yes,
off a break, just to make sure everyone's connected and we're good to go.
good idea. Okay, Tina,
Yes,
will you just go through the roll of the members, please?
yeah. Mr. Stamler?
Here,
Okay, Ms. Salili?
Here,
Mr. Valchek?
Here.
Mr. Walmarker?
Here.
Ms. Haynes?
Here,
Chairman Herbert?
Here.
Mr. Gorman?
Here,
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Yeah, Mr. Euro?
Here.
Fred, you're there, right?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks, Tina.
Mhm.
Okay,
Wait,
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman, it's 8:25 PM for the record.
Okay. What were you saying, Tina?
I just want to make sure Kevin O'Brien was on. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and the board, for allowing the opportunity to discuss with my client the status of this application. After discussing the same with my client, and in light of the events that have occurred very rapidly and very recently, we would like to defer. We would like to continue this application at the next hearing, next available hearing. But before we do so, we've heard some concerns by Ms. Haynes that we will address. We've heard some concerns about no further subdivision that we will address. And we heard some legal concerns about whether this is actually an attempt to rezone property or not an appropriate use variance. I do think, in fairness to the applicant, a request for a continuance should be granted. But having said that, we would like to hear any other concerns that any board members have, so that when we do return, we have the opportunity to address all the issues and hopefully conclude this section of the application.
Okay, so anybody have any, would like to express any concerns? Because I have one myself.
Well, I have one, John Stamler, that if we were going to move to approve this, would the applicant have a problem with the condition that an agricultural deed easement would be part of the condition of approval, meaning one house on 2 acres and the remaining acreage would be the deed easement?
Okay, that's one of the issues that we cannot resolve tonight, that I would be discussing with my client prior to the next meeting, but we've heard that issue.
Okay,
and we
thank
will
you.
address it.
And my issue would be, you have to show that the negative criteria, that this would not substantially impair the zone plan. And I think that's a pretty high hurdle, in my opinion, because this really does change the zone plan, since this was meant to be office and commercial. So I'd like to have that addressed.
Mr. Chairman, it's not, of course, for me to express concerns, but I do have a number of questions which may or may not reflect concerns that the board might have. Further questions or questions to Brian.
Go ahead.
Is his testimony otherwise done? I mean, is
I
it?
think that's what they would say, Mr. Linus, right?
No, we'd like a continuation of the application and the hearing. An issue arose tonight for the first time regarding whether this is a rezoning, appropriate for a rezoning rather than a use variance. And I think our planner should have the opportunity to address that issue.
Tonight or in the future?
Mr. Linus, your request then is to suspend Mr. O'Brien's testimony at this point and pick it up again.
That's correct.
I understand the request. Of course, it's up to the board, but I understand the request.
Okay, and do you have any other witnesses that?
Well, we had Mr. Ford, but I think it's Mr. Ford was going to testify as to any conditions that the staff reports would like imposed on this particular aspect of the application, should the application be granted.
Okay, and
Frank, you know what? Something that I would like to see is a little more of a specific plan as to where you would put a house, particularly in light if you consider an agricultural easement, a house maybe on 2 acres and the rest in an ag easement. But I'd like to, see a little bit more of a specific site plan. Might be too specific, but a location.
With this 1 month postponement, I'm sure Mr. Ford could do a concept kind of approach.
That would be fine.
Same. Mike, are you still there? Mike Ford? Well,
Yes, I'm here.
okay, you heard Ms. Haynes.
Yeah, we can do a concept, Frank.
Okay, great.
Okay, so then you're asking to be, to continue into the next meeting.
That's correct.
Patrick, next meeting, we have 2 residences, right?
Yes, there should be enough sufficient room to continue this application at that time.
Okay, so then I think your TOD is tomorrow, so you'll need to approve an extension on that.
Yeah, so what we need to do tonight is the board can grant an extension. We'll just get the paperwork together for Mr. Lennis to do the extension. We'll do it out to December 30th, just to get December in there, just in case something happens with a notice or whatever needs to happen at that point. But I would feel like the request would be not to re-notice, Mr. Lennis.
That's correct. If we get a date certain tonight, we would ask that we not be required to renotice.
Mr. Lennis, this raises an issue which you were wise to recognize earlier, because this was carried previously without, I believe it was this application, some application of yours was carried without further notice. But you observed that the notice that the board has been using for virtual meetings contains the information to access the virtual meeting. That puts a new burden on applicants, it seems to me. I think you were absolutely correct in recognizing that at least was prudent to renotice. And I think it may be appropriate for the board to address that. I was going to raise this issue separately with the board, but this may be the time. My recommendation is that the applicants, well, I don't honestly know what you do with this one, because this notice has already gone out with the specific Zoom information. But it seems to me that the applicants' notices should simply contain information that the Zoom information should be obtained from the township's website, to avoid exactly this problem where something is carried without further notice, but the applicant in fact is obliged to provide new notice anyway.
I'm not sure I go along with that, Mr. Anderson, to this extent. We're here at a meeting. It was properly noticed. The board has jurisdiction. The board has to provide the contact information for the next meeting. It's typical, or at least it was in the old days, that if you were appearing at a meeting and requested a continuance and it was granted to a date certain, that the pronouncement of the continuation of the hearing at the hearing itself was sufficient to obviate the necessity of additional notice.
I don't disagree with you at all, Mr. Lennis, in that regard as to the prior practice. And quite honestly, it was the fact that you chose to renotice because of the Zoom meeting information that alerted me to the issue. I don't personally have any problem with the board simply saying without further notice, and I would leave it again to the applicant to decide whether, given the notice that had specific Zoom information, whether it is appropriate to renotice anyway. In the old days, Mr. Lennis, certainly, as you know, I think all the board members know, the notice information was simply turn up at the municipal building at the proper date and time. And you're certainly correct that the carrying without further notice, the assumption was anybody who turned up would hear it. And what they would hear is come back on this specific date, same place, same time. We can't give that information because we don't have the Zoom information for the.
I'm assuming most municipalities that I've been involved with in this coronavirus crisis, pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, it's the board or the township or the borough that provides a specific notice as to how, plus the agenda that is noticed and placed on the website. And that has been sufficient in my view on board applications. So does Hillsborough do anything different?
Well, Hillsborough has, unlike other boards that I represent, have asked that the Zoom specific meeting Zoom information be included in the notice. Again, without carrying this further, I don't have any difficulty with the board adopting a resolution tonight to carry this without further notice and simply leave it to the applicant, whether the applicant feels it's prudent or necessary to provide renotice anyway.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for a motion to continue this to the next meeting with no notice, right?
And for the record, Mr. Chairman, what's the date and time of the next meeting?
It would, yep, I got you covered. It's November 4th, and it'll be, yeah, November 4th, Wednesday, 7 PM.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so could someone make a motion to that?
So moved.
Mr. Chairman, I haven't heard a direct acknowledgement. I'm sure that Mr. Linus is effectively acknowledging Mr. Gorman's request for an extension on time
That's
for
correct.
decision.
We will be granting, tonight we're granting it verbally. The extension would be through December 30th, you said, Pat?
Yeah, it'll just give us enough time, just in case, I mean, we're in the age of COVID. Let's just give ourselves as much time as possible to get stuff done if need be.
Yes, you have my representation tonight that the extension is granted. If you need something in paper, let me know and we'll give it to you.
Well, you're going to be up on YouTube as soon as this meeting's over, so there you go.
I
Do I hear
second
a
the motion.
second?
I second the motion.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. See you next month.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Lance. We'll be in touch.
Okay, I'm going to watch the debate. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Let us know what happens.
Okay, so we're ready to move on to the next application, Pilgrim River LLC BA 2003. Patrick, can you introduce it, please?
Yes, the next application tonight is for Pilgrim River, file number BA 20-03. At block 199, lots 50.01, lots 49, 48, 47, 46, 45, 40, and 44.01 at various addresses along Amwell Road. The applicant is seeking a preliminary and final major site plan approval at D6 variance, C bulk variances and waivers to consolidate lots 47, 48, and 49, and proposed lot 47.01. I'm sorry, to proposed lot 47.01, and to construct an addition to the existing Avalon Assistant Living Building and associated infrastructure, parking, and related improvements. Additionally, there will be shared access with lot 50.01, known as Bridgeway. The property is in GA Gateway A zone and within the ASD. Time of decision is 10/8/20. All yours, Mr. Chairman.
I have a phone call coming in. I'm just going to mute you for 2 seconds.
Okay, since we're waiting for Frank, motion to approve.
I'm not going to vote for that guy, okay? So. Okay, Mark, do you have anything to add before we start?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I think Mr. Gorman has adequately introduced the application.
Okay, Mr. Ogrodnik.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Mike Ogrodnik. I'm an attorney at Savo, Shaw, Gillespie, Ogrodnik, and Fisher in Somerville. I'm here on behalf of our longtime client and applicant, Pilgrim River LLC, which is operating as the Avalon at Hillsborough and Bridgeway Care and Rehabilitation Center at Hillsborough. We're here today seeking, as Patrick Gorman had indicated, variances in the Gateway A district to add an additional 23 units to the rear end of the existing structure. This application also proposes merging the commercial lots together, which essentially the Bridgeway lot shall remain, unchanged other than some parking reconfigurations, which Mike Ford will detail. So this application necessitates variances as follows. So there's a bunch of existing variances. The first one is the front yard setbacks. The existing Avalon at Hillsborough has a front yard setback of 159 feet, which exceeds the maximum allowable front yard setback of 20 feet and requires a C bulk variance. This is a variance that was previously granted in prior applications. The applicant also seeks to reaffirm relief for maximum front yard setbacks for lot 44.01, 45, 46, and 50.01. In addition, the reason we're before this board is, I guess, two reasons. One is the height variance. And although this is an existing building which exceeds the 3-story height limit, since we're extending the building at that 42.5 foot limit, and we exceed the stories, the allowable 2.5 stories, we require a D6 height variance for the structure, as well as a C bulk variance for the extra half of a story. For parking, we're proposing the traditional 25 feet versus 30 feet requirement, as well as the 18 feet by 20 feet requirement for the parking space length. For parking lot landscaping, 2 C bulk variances are required for deviations from the parking lot landscaping under 113.1F4A and D for double-sided parking lot with more than 20 cars, whereas 30 cars are proposed, and a minimum lot width for lots 44.01, 46, and 50.01, which are all deficient for minimum lot area. With respect to uses, David Maskey has identified pre-existing non-conforming dwelling units on 46, 45, and 44.01, which are intended to remain as they are. Since the single-family dwellings are not permitted uses under the GA zone, we are asking to reaffirm those pre-existing non-conforming uses. This application, with respect to those pre-existing non-conforming residential uses, proposes the construction of a wet pond basin, essentially a pond, on lots 44.01, 45, with a construction of improved drainage access, underground piping through lot 46. This application also necessitates several waivers. There's some light lighting, ASD overlay zone standards under 188, 175, section Z, for the spacing of the light poles, for the mounting height of 15 feet versus 12 feet, which again is existing and consistent with the development, and additional concrete walk coloring and pigmenting. There's also a relief from 188, 175J, 12, and 13 for a maximum of 12 parking spaces in a row, where 15 spaces are proposed. We've sought submission waivers for the community impact statement per section 188.32E, as this is an existing facility with no school-age children impact, and an economic hardship waiver has been submitted for a calculation under your tree mitigation ordinance. In compliance with the MLUL, we've served our neighbors and provided all the affidavits. Tonight, I have 3 primary witnesses. I have Don Pellegrino, who's essentially the owner operator of this and other Bridgeway Avalon sites. He's going to provide very brief kind of where the site's at, where it's going, the operational testimony, the amount of employees, et cetera. Our second witness is Mike Ford, our professional engineer. He's going to review the existing conditions and the proposed improvements, stormwater, lighting, et cetera. We have John Chadwick, who's our professional planner, who will wrap up the variance testimony. And on the call, we also have Jay Troutman, our traffic engineer. If the board has any questions about traffic, again, this is a 25 unit or 25 room total increase. And we also have Doug Coleman, who's our architect, available to answer any questions. So unless there are any legal questions from me, I would ask that the board swear in Don Pellegrino to provide a brief overview, and then we'll ask Mike Ford to provide the civil engineering testimony.
Tina,
Yes, sir, can you, who am I taking now? Because I don't have anybody on the screen.
Don Pellegrino.
Mr. Pellegrino, can you raise your right hand, please? I can't see him, so do you have your right hand raised?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Oh, there you are. Do you solemnly swear testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, state your name for the record, please.
Donald Pellegrino.
Thank you.
Mr. Pellegrino, could you just give the board the benefit of your experience with this operation, why you're requesting the expansion of the facility, current, operational considerations?
Sure. Again, thank you for giving us time this evening. My name is Don Pellegrino. I am the CEO and owner of Pilgrim River, the Avalon at Hillsborough, the project that we're talking about tonight. It's part of a larger group of family-owned business. We are the longest senior care provider in Somerset County. We're approaching our 40th year. Bridgeway started in 1981. We're actually in our third generation right now. In Bridgewater, it started at Bridgeway Care and Rehabilitation Center at Bridgewater in 1981 by our parents, and continue to evolve. It's two families. It's the Pellegrino family and the Rivera Duhanio families. In 1997, we expanded Bridgewater to go into the post-acute business for subacute rehabilitation. In 2000, we opened our first assisted living facility, the Avalon at Bridgewater. 2006 is when we opened this building, the Avalon at Hillsborough, which is 81 units, 97 residents. And of that, we have a 20% set aside for low to moderate income that was deed restricted for 16 units. That was done in April 20th, 2005. And then the last of our buildings, which is Bridgeway Care and Rehabilitation Center, which is to the west of the Avalon. We opened in May 2012. For those who are not familiar with our operations, we're very proud of what we've done. We've won numerous awards, local awards. We've been the best of the best, voted the best of the best assisted living facility provider by the Courier News. We've also won the Somerset County Business Partnership Economic Vitality Award. And also we've won the Outstanding Leadership in Vision and Affordable Senior Housing Award by Central Jersey Housing Resource Center. Statewide, we were finalists for Family Business of the Year. Our assisted living facilities have been recognized for advanced standing, which is the highest rating you can get by the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey. We've done that for 7 consecutive years. Our Bridgeway Hillsborough nurse, which at this time was the Infection Prevention Nurse of the Year by the New Jersey Association Director Nurses Association in 2020. And our Avalon at Hillsborough Director Nurse was a healthcare hero and also recognized by the American Healthcare Association as a Nurse of the Year. So our business model and everything else is we're family owned and operated. We're on site daily. We take a lot of pride in what we do. Our skilled nursing facilities have been ranked as 5-star facilities in the past. And we've won various different awards, the American Healthcare Association on silver and bronze quality award. The site selection that we had, this was kind of a natural progression for us. The area for expansion is located in the northern section. It's an attachment, as you can see on the picture on the screen, for an addition onto the northern section of the building. Currently, we were in front of the board a few years ago wanting to do an expansion for memory care. There is a big need for memory care. The current design of the building being 81 units, 97 residents, 19 of those units were for memory care. That's our Generations residence, which is located on the 3rd floor. And our goal this evening, as we give our presentation, is looking to expand that and add 18 additional residents to our memory care and really design a specialized memory care, which would primarily be on the 3rd floor of the building. as well as Mr. Ogrodnik shared, 387 Amwell Road, which is on the eastern side of the Avalon, is also owned, and all of the properties that we're going to discuss this evening are all owned by the Pellegrino and Rivera Dejanio families. Though they may have different corporate names, it's all our family. So as we get into it, and if there's any questions, it's all of our families. The Pellegrino and Rivera Dejanio own these properties from 399 Amwell Road all the way down to 1 by our court. This whole section is our family, owned by our family for development here. As right now, we found out that the proposed expansion for the memory care services, as I'll share with you shortly, would also be a complement to, as we're looking for like an assisted living light future development along the 381, 385, and 1 by our court, because we do have a large swath of property to the east, which our goal will be in the future is, coming back to the board, because we want to be able to provide a broad continuum of care and looking more of like an assisted living light type program. There's been significant growth in the marketplace, and Hillsborough knows that. The town has grown quite a bit. And on the primary market area, which we're talking is a 10-mile radius, the census has grown quite a bit. Just the population trends in the 10-mile radius has gone up 4% from 2010 to 2020, to up from 183,000 to 190,000 people. But in the primary market area for 75 to 84, if you can believe that in the past 10 years, it has grown 22.6%. It is now 8,414 is the estimate for 2020. And it's actually going to go up in the next 5 years, another 14% to 9,600 people. So there's a big growth in the target market of 75 to 84. And even in the 85 age range group, the 2010 census was 3,272, and the 2020 census went up 28%. It's estimated to be 4,187, and it continues to grow. It's going to level off a little in the coming years up to 2025. But in summary, as you can determine, that the primary service area has experienced a lot of positive annual growth since 2010. It's outpacing actually the state and the nation in growth, which is very good. Again, on the senior care side, that's why we're presenting this project to you this evening. And when we get into even the ratio of the adult children to make the decisions for their senior parents, it's a large group of people that are the decision makers that are also in our primary market area. And the last part on census and statistics is, back when we gave our original testimony back in 2016, the American Healthcare Association was talking about there was in excess of 5.4 million people living with Alzheimer's disease, including 500,000 in New Jersey. And based on everything with the baby boomer generation, that number of people living with Alzheimer's disease is supposed to double by 2030. So obviously, our goal that we're looking here this evening is to really to reconfigure our building. This addition, and we'll get into the number of units that we're talking about, is really to expand our memory care unit from 19 residents to 33 residents. And 56% of what we're looking at is going to be for, of the 25 resident expansion is going to be for memory care. As you can see here in this rendering, it's a 3-story building to match the existing design, and Mr. Coleman will get into that. It's going to be 23 apartments, 14 one-bedrooms, 7 single studios, and 2 semi-private units. It'll accommodate 25 residents. And it'll be a design where the Avalon will actually have a memory care community as well as the traditional assisted living community. So right now, on the traditional, we have 63 units. We're going to add 9 more to bring it to 71. And in our memory care, we have 19. Our goal is to add 14 more to bring it to 33. The residents that we have, we currently have 81 units, 97 residents. We're going to be adding 25 additional residents to the building. The traditional is only going to go up about 7 more on the traditional assisted living from 78 to 85. But the memory care is where it's going to grow, because again, it's going to go from 19 up to 37. So it's going to be an increase in units and an increase in residents. And moving along, it's not an increase in a lot of staff though, because currently we have 63 residents, 63 employees in the building. And with the expansion, it's only going to be an additional 10 more employees, bringing us from 63 to 73. In addition, in going through this, in the summary, you'll understand that there is a big need for the growth in memory care. And part of the other rooms, if you're asking and you have some interest of, well, why are they putting these other units on? My mom passed in December. And one of the things that when I lived this for 2 years, we're also creating 1-bedroom suites where there's a sitting area where I only have one in the building currently. The other rooms that we're going to be designing are going to be a 1-bedroom sitting area with a bedroom and its private bathroom, which was the suite that, my family was fortunate to enjoy. We were in the Bridgewater building at that time, the Bridgewater Avalon. But that was part of it when I was there talking with my mom and our family. We're going, listen, we need to expand the number of these because it's a lot more comfortable for families. So it's an expansion of the memory care as well as the design of the single suites and as well as some of the double suites. So that's all I have. But again, the proposed expansion of the Avalon is the perfect addition to our senior care campus and providing a much needed service to our residents of our community. That's all.
Mr. Pellegrino, I have a question. When you came in 2016, I guess it was, you were going to build a standalone facility on the adjacent lot, I believe, for memory care. Why have you decided to go with this addition rather than the previously planned standalone?
Great question. And my partners asked me that too, since we were so far down the road going with it. The problem that came back is back at that time, everybody was talking about build memory care buildings, build specific memory care buildings. It was hot and it died out real fast because what was happening is that they wanted a person to age in place in the assisted living facility. So as mom is in the building in our existing assisted living facility, to take them out as their mental health conditions change and to pull them physically out of a building and bring them to another building is a major life-changing event. And the thought process changed in going back and looking at your campuses and the services you provide and let that person, to a degree, age in place. Here, we would able, on the memory care, to be able to accommodate it in our building, our existing building. They don't have to leave the campus. They may transition from traditional assisted living up to our 3rd floor now unit. But the family doesn't need to be uprooted. The resident, which is very traumatic for the person with memory care and Alzheimer's, to be put into a new environment, it really causes a lot of turmoil in their life. So when we went back, we decided to say, hey, listen, let's look at it. Let's let the person age in place. Let's stop this project at this point in time and let's go back and reconsider it. And this was the one option where we came back and were saying, well, why don't you just expand and offer those services in your existing building? And that's what we're presenting to you this evening.
What plans, if any, do you have for the vacant lots to the east there?
Our goal in the future is to offer a continuum of care. So like an assisted living light, is which I'm talking to you about, is someone who may not need as much on a medical side of it, because assisted living is a medical and social model, and allowing a person as their medical conditions start to change. What we're looking at now is that there is, and again, we'll call it a better word of assisted living light, and where it is an individual, say in their 80s, doesn't need to have a nurse's aide and pay the fee to have nursing staff available. They want to have more of a social opportunity where they can have, dining, they can have activities and alike. They also want to have a proximity to walk or be able to have physical therapy nearby. And what we'll be able to do is, our goal is providing it where if there is a service that they want to come over, or activities in the assisted living facility, they can enjoy that, but they could still live in an assisted living type of unit. It'll be a bigger apartment. It'll be a 1-bedroom with a large sitting room and like a kitchenette type of area. But we would hope that the social aspect will join in to a degree with the assisted living facility, traditional assisted living people, but at a lower entry point in cost, because they don't want to pay, nor do they need the medical model. So they would probably start off in the assisted living light coming in, staying independent, doing whatever they want, have their own card, et cetera, et cetera. As their health conditions may change and they need the medical model, then they would come into the traditional side of assisted living. If they develop a memory care issue, they would go up to our third floor in our memory care. If, God forbid, they fall and develop a true medical issue that I cannot accommodate in assisted living, then they would go over to Bridgeway, Hillsborough. So you would have the whole continuum, and it would start on the east side in a much lower level type of care and not a nursing based care. Then you get to the assisted living, which is the medical social model, and then the skilled nursing, which is purely a medical model.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have two questions for Mr. Pellegrino, if I may.
Go ahead.
So Mr. Pellegrino, hi, Pat Gorman here.
Hi, Pat.
Just two questions about the previous application about the standalone memory care facility. That's no longer being pursued at all at this point?
Correct.
Okay. And then going on to the other expanded properties, can you please explain to the board what the uses of the existing dwellings are and how they are used with your project? Or are they rented, or if you can elaborate?
Sure. Thank you, Patrick, for bringing that up. There's 3 houses that are there. There's one there's a yellow house, which I believe is 385 Amwell. There's a brown house, 381 Amwell, and there's one by our court. These have been godsends to us because what happens is staffing, and if you read the papers and you know where it is, staffing in senior care is very, very difficult. So what we end up doing is that we have families living in these houses, employees that live in the houses, and basically they just walk over to work. It's all set up which has worked great for us because there's family units that are there when we need staffing, we're able to call. And during the COVID side of it, and even pre-COVID, that has been our lifeblood, because trying to get senior care providers, be it certified nurses aides, is the biggest challenge in our entire industry. So we were able to provide housing for the CNAs. And basically when the COVID crisis hit us, they saved us, because as we were losing staff, not coming in and everything else, they became more and more crucial to our staffing model. And I'm going to have a dilemma when I do develop this property, because those houses are so important to my day-to-day operations, not only on the assisted living, but on the skilled nursing side of it. And honestly, depending on what our next step is going to be, the importance of having those housing, I'm hoping that when Amwell Terrace opens across the way, that they may be able to then move over to Amwell Terrace, or who knows, but I need to have a place for my staff to live, to support my operations. Because if I didn't have that, to be honest with you people, I would have been in so much trouble during the COVID crisis. And even pre-COVID, it was not easy.
Good, thank you.
I have one question myself. For some reason, I thought the memory care unit was over in Bridgeway. I guess it's not.
Well, no, there's all different levels of memory care. We have on our second floor in 2 North, our second floor at Bridgeway, the people that are there are much more medically complex. So in the Avalon at Hillsborough, for example, to do a Hoyer lift and get somebody in and out of bed requires, 2 CNAs, and you need a nurse that's nearby. It's beyond the level of care that should be provided in assisted living. And that's the continuum of care, is when an individual either continues to fall down and becomes a harm to themselves physically. And we, again, this is assisted living is a social and medical model. The staffing levels in the nursing home are far exceed that in the assisted living facility on the medical side. So if an individual with memory care needs to be transitioned by a Hoyer lift, just say, or needs higher levels of care and queuing, then they would go over to Bridgeway.
Okay, any more questions from the members of the board? At this point, I ask for a motion to go open public.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Fred, would you open up the public line to see if there's any questions for this witness?
Sure. Is there anybody from the public who has a question for this witness? Please raise your hand. Remember to state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, Chairman, you may proceed.
Okay, Mr. Ogrodnik.
Thank you, members of the board. Our next witness is Michael Ford from Van Cleef Engineering Associates. He's our civil engineer on the case. Obviously, we ask him to be accepted as a professional in the field of civil engineering. And Mike, are you planning to share your screen? If you could, please go through the exhibits and identify them as A1 through A11 and explain your testimony on the site plan condition.
Who's holding this screen up right now with the building?
That's
Mr.
me.
Chairman, it's Fred. I've already given Mr. Ford the ability, so he is sharing his screen.
Okay.
Thanks, Fred.
Yeah, we need to swear him in.
Board, do you solemnly swear testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, now I can sit back and relax.
We can accept
Michael-
Mr. Ford's qualifications. He's testified many times.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I have on the screen the exhibits that are actually currently available and posted on the township website under the Board of Adjustment hearing for this evening, identified as Pilgrim River presentation. This first view that you see here illustrates the portion of the building where there's an addition. And this is a view looking at the site in the building from the east, or from what I'll show in a site plan in the few moments, the Route 206 bypass side of the building. And what I'm highlighting now with the hand is where the existing building ends at the back, and then to the right of this screen is the addition. I'll go to the next slide now.
I don't see it in, Mike.
Oh, can you see it now?
No, Mike, it seems like you're frozen on the one screen.
Okay. Let me see if I can. That's showing that now?
No.
Nope, still the one picture.
I hate when this happens.
Sorry.
Can't resolve it. Fred may be able to display him. You can talk to him.
Fred, can you kick me out of
Yeah, let me-
sharing
let me-
and then I'll get back in?
Yeah.
Oh, there's my, okay.
All right, Mike, you want to try again?
Yes. Yeah, give me a minute.
Yep.
Can everybody
There
see
you go.
this now?
Hey, okay.
The hand?
Okay.
Yep, you're good.
Thank you for your patience. Okay, this is that first view I described earlier, and I'll repeat, this is the view from the east, or the Route 206 bypass side of the existing facility. And what I'm highlighting now is where the existing building ends today, and then to the right of the screen is the addition. And now this is the view from the west side of the building. Basically, you're standing in back of the Bridgeway facility, if you will. And what you see is, I'm highlighting now the end of the existing building. And then to the left of the screen is the addition. As Mr. Ogrodnik indicated in the opening remarks, it's an existing 3-story structure, and we're proposing an addition of 3 stories. And what I'd like to highlight on this view is one of the elements that is an enhancement as part of this addition is an outdoor area for recreational space on that 3rd floor level. And what I understand from the operation, that provides for a secure environment for
those perhaps in that memory care area to enjoy some outdoor recreational space without the need to leave the building, if you will. Now I'll go to the next exhibit, which takes you to my element of the project, which is the site plan. This is an exhibit of the existing conditions. I'm highlighting now with the hand the existing Avalon at Hillsborough facility. To the west of it, or toward the top of the page, is the Bridgeway facility. You see Amwell Road down the left side of your screen, and then the two existing driveways that enter this complex, if you will, or the campus, with a connecting driveway across the front, as well as circulating driveways throughout the site. What I'll say as far as circulation, we're not proposing any changes as part of this application, to the existing driveways at Amwell Road. None of them are changing. In fact, we've already secured a May 5th, 2020 review report or letter from the county indicating site plan approval of this application. And that's one of our outside agencies that we've already secured approval from. As you traverse to the rear of the property, or to the right-hand side of the page, you'll see the parking for the existing Avalon facility at the rear of the building. And then beyond that, a large open green area, which is the existing stormwater management facility that currently services all of this complex. As part of the planning for this addition, the addition would be at the rear of the Avalon building. So you can see that that addition will be over existing parking. And you'll see when I go to the proposed site plan element, but this is a good opportunity to show you part of our thought process, is that to provide for the parking in close proximity to the facility, we've elected to fill in this existing stormwater management facility and provide the parking immediately adjacent to the rear of the Avalon facility. And then also part of this parking will help, and I'll describe this in greater detail on the site plan. It actually helps to improve even that connectivity between the Bridgewater facility and the Avalon facility with through parking. And anybody that's been to the Bridgeway facility will know what I'm about to describe. And that is, while there's existing driveways that connect the two facilities here, at the rear of the Bridgeway facility, you have these rows of parking that dead end. So if you don't find a parking space, you got to make a K-turn and turn around. Part of our site plan will be connecting these driveways just as the existing driveways are connected, and provide a more fluent circulation pattern. One of the other enhancements of the proposal is this existing main entrance to the Avalon facility is along a straight driveway, which presents some difficulty with making a circular turn to drop off people or pick up somebody at that main entrance. One of the enhancements Mr. Pellegrino had us include in this application is an improvement to that porte-cochere, and I'll show you that in a moment as well. With regards to other existing conditions, you'll know that we've described already the 3 existing residents along Amwell Road that are part of this overall 21-acre tract, if you will, that the Pellegrino and other families control. Those 3 existing residences will not be changed as part of this application. But the reason they are included as part of the application, those properties, is that when we fill in this existing detention basin, and the entire site flows in an easterly direction toward the bottom of the page, and this is the lower elevation. We're proposing at that lower elevation is obviously where detention basins want to be, the new detention basin. Okay, so now what I'd like to go to is the proposed condition, which is the next slide. Okay, you see again, highlighted in dark brown, the existing building, Avalon facility. as well as just to the top of the page, the Bridgeway facility that remains unchanged as part of this application. The proposed addition is highlighted in a darker brown at the rear of the existing Avalon facility. And now you see what I just described, which is that parking area expansion immediately behind the Avalon facility that provides for that connection and conductivity between the parking areas behind the Bridgeway facility, as well as the enhancements to the drop-off or main entrance of the Avalon facility that has a portico share. And we've realigned the driveway slightly to provide for a better turning movement, enhance that appearance and the entrance to that building. As far as utilities, both, the existing facility is serviced by public sewer and water from Amwell Road. The proposed addition will be serviced by an extension of those utilities, either by way of the existing water main or existing lateral on site. So there'll be no new utility connections for sewer and water for the addition. And then with regards to the lot merger that Mr. Ogrodnik described, you'll see that we've highlighted in green here the existing lot, which is vacant right now, just to the east or toward the bottom of the page of the Avalon facility that'll be merged with that property, as well as lot 48, which is an actual landlocked piece of property at the rear of that site, which will be merged with the Avalon facility, bringing it up to a total of approximately 7.5 acres. Now I'll go to the stormwater management aspects of the property. You'll see highlighted at the bottom of the page where we're proposing the new wet basin or retention basin. It's wet and retention basin to address new and enhanced stormwater management requirements that have evolved over the development of this facility. That is, the wet aspect of the pond will provide for water quality measures that are required as part of any current stormwater management facility. And then we also thought that as the development of this campus proceeds to the east toward the bypass, which is right off the screen or right off the page here at the bottom, as it proceeds to the east, that assisted living light, as Mr. Pellegrino described, would perhaps be located in this area. And that wet basin would provide not only stormwater management for that future development, and it's been sized to accommodate that future development or build out of the site, if you will, the maximum allowable impervious coverage, but also an aesthetically pleasing environment for the residents. And as I stated, it's at the low end of the site. It's in a portion of property that is wooded. Although we made a visit to the Environmental Commission and they agreed with our characterization that this is historically was farmed area, and the wooded area that's taken over since that farming many years ago, but some time ago, is not a mature, high quality wood area, but more of the little seed or cedar trees. And we are disturbing a portion of that wooded area. We are proposing tree mitigation in accordance with the township ordinance, but under the economic hardship threshold, which limits that mitigation requirement to 1.5% of your overall project costs. With regards to the existing 3 residents, as you see on this exhibit, as I described earlier, they're not being changed at all. So those houses will remain as they are today. And in fact, much of this application really, from a view of the public from Amwell Road, will remain unchanged, because I'll say it would be difficult to see this addition at the rear of the facility and then the existing appearance of the site from Amwell Road of both the Avalon and Bridgeway facility will remain as it is today. That is, the circulation you see, the driveways remain unchanged. And then with regards to deliveries and trucks, right now, there's this access area between the two facilities where trucks can be accommodated for deliveries. There's a trash enclosure centrally located at the rear of the buildings. I'm highlighting now with the hand, that'll remain and continue to service both facilities. And one of the other enhancements that'll be part of this application would be there's immediately adjacent to the existing trash enclosures and dumpsters, there's existing generators that service the existing buildings. Those generators are going to be upgraded and relocated to this area I'm highlighting now at the rear of the site next to the expanded parking area. Part of that generator relocation and enhancement will be to provide additional power source so that the generators are not just for what is, the absolute required electrical supply of the facility, but actually provide for full generating power for the entire facility. And I'm sure you'll recall, not too long ago, the major issues that occurred at an assisted living or care facility in Florida, where power was out for some period of time after a storm. And since then, the regulations governing these types of facilities have required that these alternate power sources be supplied. With regards to other outside agency approvals, we've been to the Delaware Raritan Canal Commission and received a July 6th, 2020 report for them, which acknowledges that our stormwater management facility has been designed in accordance with their regulations, and they follow and mimic the state regulations regarding both water quality, quantity, and recharge. And the only aspect of the July 6th DNR Canal Commission report is, as this board knows, they hold out their final certificate of approval until an applicant can provide proof of local municipal approval and county approval. So the only thing we really owe the DNR Canal Commission now to secure their final sign off is a township municipal approval. And then one of the last review agencies we've been to and actually secured their approval as well is the Somerset Union Soil Conservation District approval issued July 10th, 2020. I'd like to maybe just go quickly, and I appreciate the hour. We received a September 25th, 2020 review memorandum from the board's engineer, Mr. Euro. I've had the opportunity to discuss the review memorandum with Mr. Euro, and the applicant is ready to comply with each and every one of Mr. Euro's comments and requests for information to his satisfaction as a condition of any approval this board may grant. And that would include the landscaping, the stormwater management requests. As was stated earlier, Mr. Pellegrino and the families own and have control over all these properties. So the maintenance of this detention basin will be their responsibility. And while it's behind these existing residences, it'll be placed in an easement. And that easement, including the maintenance responsibilities of it, would be drawn up by the applicant's attorney to the satisfaction of the township attorney and the board's attorney. With regards to truck turning templates, we did also receive a review memorandum from the Township Fire Chief Marshal dated September 30th. He points out that we provided a truck turning template for fire circulation that would have shown a truck going through this portico share, but there's an area to bypass that and not need to drive under that portico share. I've already provided that revised plan to Mr. Winiger, and again, we would agree to satisfy any of Mr. Winiger's remaining comments in his September 30th review memorandum as a condition of approval. Perhaps maybe I should take a breath now and see if there's any questions. And
Mike, I have a question. Can you tell us, and maybe it's on these plans, but frankly, the print is so small, it's impossible to read. How many existing parking places and how many will there be if this plan is approved?
yes, certainly. Okay. Existing today on the Avalon facility, and that's the facility that have it in the addition, there are 48 parking spaces. And in the proposed condition, we're providing 95 where 81 are required. So we're certainly meeting and exceeding our parking requirement.
And one other question, in the light green area to the east, isn't there, and maybe it's a temporary, because I know parking's very tight there, and I do applaud Avalon for having public groups allowed to meet there and so on, but I do know that parking is tight. Isn't there like a temporary gravel parking area there in that light gray?
Yes, here it is on the existing condition. I'm highlighting
Right.
it with the hand.
Right.
And then in the proposed condition, we're requesting that we keep that. We're not looking at that as being for permanent parking, obviously, but it's an existing site improvement, and we'd rather just leave it there for the potential need if there's any, overflow or an outdoor event that has an outdoor gravel area to occupy.
Yeah, no, I think that's smart. Would you have to come back in for approval to expand that?
We've included it as part of this approval. We've shown it on the plan to remain. That existing impervious coverage or that impervious coverage to remain has been accounted for as part of the stormwater management facility. We actually anticipate that this gravel area will serve as a staging area during construction even. And perhaps now I can describe part of that element. The existing condition. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, you seem to have space there that you could make it even larger if parking gets tight, during public meetings or things of that sort.
Right. Yeah, if we did anything different than this site plan, obviously we'd have to come back to the board. Our request this evening is just to leave that gravel parking area as is now, since it's an existing improvement. To remove it would be, really unnecessary. And as you stated, it seems like a prudent planning element to leave it there.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting you remove it. I'm suggesting you maybe make it bigger.
Well, we provided 95 parking spaces at the rear. We're improving the pedestrian access along this side of the driveway with sidewalks and marked crosswalks. You'll see actually on that rendering, in addition to the main entrance here, the rendering includes other entrances for employees. So.
Yes, this is Frank. So you're adding how many new units in the building again?
It's 97 beds today and an additional 25 beds with the building expansion for a total of 122.
So you're adding 25 beds and you're adding 81 parking spots, right?
No, we have 48 today.
Yeah, no, they're not. Yeah.
How many additional parking spots?
And I think you see that, that anybody who's visited the facility, there's times where, and this is really, I think, what resulted in this gravel parking lot, a parking need. Part of this project will solve that problem.
Right. So you're adding more parking spots and beds, and then half the people in those beds don't drive, so you have a net increase for sure, right?
Right.
So it's 25 new beds and 47 new parking places. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes.
25 residents.
Right. The beds are increasing by about 20% and the parking's virtually doubling. Any other questions?
Hey, Mike, it's Bob Euro.
Hi.
Real quick with your new detention basin. I noticed that there's a discharge point, I guess at the northeast corner. And that's adjacent to DOT property. Is that going to have any impact on any adjoining properties? Or is that going to drain into existing ditches and wetland areas?
Right. Good question. No adverse impact to neighbors. There's a pretty substantial wetland area on our northerly boundary, about 3 acres of wetlands. And we've actually already been to NJDEP for our wetland permits, including filling a little isolated wetland. And on September 25th, we secured the DEP approval for the filling of this little wetland, as well as some minor buffer averaging here.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
One additional question, with the increase of the number of beds, do you need an amended TWA for your sanitary sewer?
The answer is no. We should be under the 8,000 gallon threshold that would trigger that.
Okay, thank you.
I think you can move on, Mike, if you.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a few questions, please.
Oh, go ahead.
Like, offhand, and what's provided in the plans or the report, since this is a shared parking area, how many employees or what's the capacity at the Bridgeway location?
The Bridgeway facility, the only reason it's really part of this application is because of this little minor connection between the parking areas, but we're not making any changes to the number of parking spaces on the Bridgeway facility.
So but it doesn't answer my question. The question is how big is the Bridgeway facility? Because the board doesn't have that information at the moment.
Okay.
The Bridgeway facility has 130 residents.
Pellegrino, let Mike,
Yeah.
answer. We'll come back to you. So we just have
Yeah,
one.
I don't know the answer to Mr. Gorman's question about the capacity of the Bridgeway facility.
Okay, so we don't confuse Tina,
Yeah.
We'll come back to you, Mr. Pellegrino. Go ahead, Patrick, any more questions?
Yeah, Mr. Ford, there's a couple other things about the gravel parking lot is going to be used as overflow parking, specifically when events are held at the facility,
Right,
even though you're over parked already.
right.
Okay. And Mr. Mascapore has requested that the crosswalks be extended to the back to parking aisle areas.
Patrick.
Is that a problem?
Patrick,
We'll comply.
you were like, dang, 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 dang. Okay, Mr. Maskey's report requesting the crosswalk.
Yeah,
be
requested
extended.
crosswalks on the rear, on the new two parking aisles in the back to be extended. And Mr. Ford replied that they will comply.
Correct.
And also with this plan that you'll be doing some tree mitigation. To my understanding, because the detention basin area is going to be losing a lot of trees in that area. And you're not only doing some mitigation, but you're requesting hardship waiver request.
Yes, in accordance with the ordinance, the economic hardship waiver, the 1.5% threshold. Yes.
Sure. And then lastly, that we're looking at, there was a comment from the Environmental Commission in regards to the detention basin and the grading to make sure that the detention basin won't be draining the wetland area.
Yes, the permanent pool elevation of the basin is not lower than the wetlands, so it won't drain or have an adverse impact on the wetlands to the north.
Okay. Yeah, as long as we can answer the question about the bridgeway, if the parking is adequate for both facilities, then we can move on from that.
Go ahead. You might have some more testimony.
Don, do you want to just briefly comment on the parking for the Bridgeway facility, and then we'll move on to our planning testimony?
Definitely. What we've experienced at the Bridgeway facility is that if you've been by the Bridgeway facility, we do have 130 residents, and between visitors that are coming in and with the rehab portion of our business, plus the employees, that at any peak time that we're going to have car traffic is going to be about 130 people possibly in the building at one time, up between 130 and 140. Usually around noon is our peak time. There has been some overflow that was using actually the Avalon parking as well. This, in the calculation of the total bed, the total parking in the back of the building should alleviate any parking needs and more than adequately handle both the Bridgeway Hillsborough parking and the Avalon at Hillsborough parking with excess overflow. So though we're increasing 48, I think we said from 48 to 90 something, and I don't remember the exact on the count of the parking spaces. Yeah, it was 48. We were adding 47 to bring up to around 95. That additional capacity is to accommodate both the Bridgeway Hillsborough, which was a little tight on the site at this point in time, as well as the Avalon, and it should provide more than adequate parking.
Sure. So how many beds are in Bridgeway and how many employees?
Excuse me, it's John Stamler. Bridgeway, is this application affecting the Bridgeway?
It's a shared parking area, Mr. Stamler.
Yeah, but I'm asking, why are we discussing Bridgeway? There was no changes.
Because we're making sure that because it wasn't provided as part of their plans.
What are they changing to the Bridgeway, Patrick, that you're questioning? I don't get it.
No, so basically what they're adding an addition here, but it was not shown in the report of how many beds and how many employees are a part of the Bridgeway portion of the property. As they're expanding the parking lot, it was just to ensure that we have adequate parking.
To ensure, but I don't understand. I don't get it. Thank you.
Okay, so where are we? We finished with Mr. Pellegrino?
Just that the parking will be adequate based on the calculations that Mr. Ford came up when we looked at the number of employees that are at Bridgeway Hillsborough and Avalon Hillsborough, including the additional 10 employees that would be coming on with the expansion. We would have more than adequate parking that's being accounted for the expanded parking in the back of the property that's being proposed at this time. Hopefully that answers your question, Patrick.
It does not, but you can proceed.
Okay.
Mike, you finished, or are you going to add more testimony?
We have no more testimony from Mr. Ford at this time, or Mr. Pellegrino.
Okay, so what I'm going to do then is open public questions for both of them. Mike Ford first. So Fred, would you open the public line?
Sure. If anybody from the public would like to ask any questions of these witnesses, please raise your hand. Seeing none, Chairman, you can proceed.
Okay. Mr. Grodnick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have Jay Troutman, our traffic consultant on the line. I didn't intend to introduce him as a witness, but if I would offer his testimony if anybody has any questions with respect to traffic.
Any members of the board have questions for the traffic engineer?
No.
Nothing from Bob Euro.
Okay. Same with Doug Coleman. You've seen the renderings. Obviously, it's consistent with the architecture. So I'm just going to offer if there's any questions for the architecture.
Any questions for the architecture, members?
No.
Hearing none.
So our final witness is John Chadwick, our professional planner.
Still there.
Yes, I am.
John, could you just provide briefly your background and your licensure and go over the D and C variances necessitated by this application?
Yes. Do we want to swear first?
Yes, Mr. Chadwick, do you solemnly swear a testimony you're about to give this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Do you need spelling of my name or are you okay?
No, Mr. Chadwick, we've both been around for a long time.
Yes, we have. You've had a pretty thorough explanation of this project by
What, we need to know your qualifications first.
qualifications. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey and have been for quite some time and have appeared before this board
Okay, we can accept your qualifications.
previously.
Go ahead.
You've had a pretty thorough description of what exists and what is proposed, both Mr. Pellegrino and Mike Ford. The variances here are two use variances. One has to do with height because the height of the building is more than 10% allowed. And the other is the three homes on the three lots to the south side or east side of the property are, the homes themselves are unchanged. The wet pond in the rear alters what their pre-existing condition was. There's also a number of minor deviations having to do with the size of parking lots and landscaping. And lastly, a discussion of the mitigation of tree growth on the site. Let me deal with the 2D variances. One is height, and you had a description of how the building will look. It's an extension of the existing facility. It is to the rear of the facility. The height and number of stories were granted previously for both buildings. This particular addition, one for a view from the street, I agree with Mike Ford. I don't believe you would know it's there unless somebody took you in the main driveway. It is approximately 300 feet or greater from the property to the rear, which is the landscaping business. I think you can see on the exhibit up currently that the backyard of this property is commercial, put it that way. The pre-existing nonconformity affected by the, which is the D6, I believe, use category, are the three homes you've had testimony. One, that they are essential to the operation of this facility. It's kind of joined by the hip in terms of their need and their function. The wet basin to the rear is clearly not impacting or altering their presence from the roadway or the use of the properties in terms of yard space, driveways, parking, etc. The next category of adjustments is the parking design issues. The width of the access aisles is the same as has existed on this site. You do have a report from the fire marshal indicating adequate site movement, but for the portico issue that Mike Ford explained. The size of the spaces is 9 by 18, which has existed on the site I guess for now, almost 20 years. The size in terms of those spaces is a common characteristic of non-retail uses. I believe has served the site well, and they are adequate in terms of function. Also, there's a condition that the proposal does not precisely meet the landscaping requirements of parking lots. There is a requirement for landscaping when there is a certain number of cars in a parked area. We exceed it in minimum. But looking at the exhibit, you'll see that there are planting islands along the edge of the parking lot and within the parking lot. And I think it provides, it meets the intent of that design standard. The last item is the request for mitigation of tree requirements. I've been to the site on several occasions. You have what I would refer to as pioneer growth. I agree with the Environmental Commission that is basically got cedars and some other trees in those locations. The site is described by Mr. Pellegrino in response to questions, is intended to be fully developed at some point in time. And to meet the ordinance requirement would be simply placing trees in an area that is contemplated for future development. I think the request for the economic hardship has merit for the reasons I've stated. Lastly, the project is an inherently beneficial use. We all realize that. And the criteria for approving the sum of all these different issues that I've tried to move along quickly, I recognize the hour, is there something that is so substantial that overwhelms the benefits of these types of facilities? And I think Mr. Pellegrino described in thoroughly what these facilities do for society and a aging population. I don't see anything that has been described in this plan that is so substantial that it would warrant a rejection of this application. In fact, I think in terms of providing a diversity of uses along Amwell Road in this location, this facility clearly does that. It meets, I believe, all the criteria associated with inherently beneficial uses and their merits. I think the last item is, as in the prior approvals and in your affordable housing plan, they would provide the 20% set aside on the 23 units, which would be the 4 units, 4 additional units, depending on what the rules are in the future. And the future really is not far away on certification on a housing element. They may equal 8. So it's contributing not only in terms of providing housing for a segment of the society, it's also contributing towards your affordable housing obligations in the future. All of those things, I believe, clearly warrant an approval. The use itself in the Gateway District has been added to that district as a permitted use. And as stated before, the reason we're here is because of the height issue fully described previously and the three house lots with the wet pond. So in my judgment, there is no substantial impacts on the zoning ordinance, the zoning plan, and the application warrants your approval.
Thank you, John. I have no further questions for the witness.
Okay, Fred, could you take down the display so we can all see each other again on one screen? Thank you. Any questions for members of the board for this witness?
Hi, Mr. Chairman, it's Pat Gorman. I took down what the planner said. I may have missed it because it got a little bit scrambled for me. Was there any mention about any potential negative impacts?
Yes, I said, in my judgment, there are none.
Thank you, just for the record. Thank you. I have to take the minutes still, so.
Any board members' questions? Mark?
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Fred, would you just open up for the public line for questions from the public, please?
Sure. Anybody from the public have any comments for this witness? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, Chairman, you may proceed.
Okay, Mr. Ogrodnik, would you like to wrap it up?
We have no further witnesses. Again, we thank the board for their time. I understand it's a late hour. Again, we think this is a pretty modest increase of intensity on this use, which is an existing use, which is a permitted use. And we would ask the board approve this application with all the conditions noted in the both the engineering and planning review memorandum.
Okay, a motion to close public.
Frank, you needed statements from the public?
Didn't I ask that? Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Didn't I ask that? But Fred, open a line for statements from the public.
You did questions.
Yeah, we did questions for the witness. Any member of the public have any statements based on this application? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, Chairman, you may proceed.
Okay, what do I do, Chick?
Any comments from the board?
Okay, so let's have board discussion now. Comments from the board.
I think it's a good application. They covered all the bases. Passing that site, every day or every other day, I think it's great. I like what they're planning. I don't see any flaws. They've agreed to comply to all the engineers and environmental recommendations. So, I'm sure if there's any board members that want to make other comments, that's fine, but I'll motion after we're all done with that.
Okay. Anybody else have comments?
John, go ahead and make a motion.
All right.
There was no conditions, correct?
I'm sorry?
John, it's Patrick.
He's going to make a motion, Pat.
Oh, I was gonna say, I didn't see any conditions listed.
He hasn't made the motion yet, I don't think.
My apologies.
John?
Okay, I move to approve the application, and as per the application, they will comply to all our engineers and environmental recommendations and everything else agreed to during this meeting.
I will second that.
Okay, now Patrick, is there anything that we didn't cover there or?
What?
No, like I said, I don't see, I don't think there's anything extra on there. John, there wasn't anything extra, right?
I think I covered everything, and I mentioned anything mentioned on this meeting.
Yeah.
That was agreed to.
Now, Mr. Ogrodnik, we only have 6 members here tonight. Would you like to have us take a vote or wait till postpone to another?
Frank, we already have a motion on the floor.
Well,
Yeah, I would, I'm comfortable with the motion. Let me just allow Mr. Pellegrino to chime in.
Yes, I'm fine with carrying a vote this evening.
Okay, Tina, roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Stamler,
Yes.
Ms. Lilly,
Yes.
Mr. Vouchek,
Yes.
Mr. Walmarker,
Yes.
Ms. Haynes,
Yes.
Chairman Herbert.
Yes,
Okay,
congratulations.
Thank you. very much.
Congrats.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
I like what you're doing over there. Keep it up, please.
Thank you.
Reserve a room for Chicky.
Reserve a room for John.
Room for all of us. Are you kidding?
Chicky was
All agree
worried
to
about
find out the future, my future, right?
Chicky was worried about the
Maybe the whole board. I don't know.
Hey, Chicky.
Let's
I'll
not,
come and visit.
let's
Chicky
not
wants to-
debate which member of the
Wants to
board.
park her,
Okay, before we go, the next meeting is November 4th. Patrick, would you just, review what's going to be at that meeting?
Yeah, sure. We had one carryover, the Norma Mance application, which was carried because the notice was found to be faulty at the previous meeting. We'll have another homeowner on that meeting. Both of our C bulk variances, and then we carried the Timco application to that meeting. We have quite a few homeowners that are still out there, plus one major application for Harvesters Gospel Church. That would be Mr. Ogrodnik's application. We're working with him to get some dates in order. That will probably take a whole meeting, in my opinion. So we're only left with November and December. I'm not sure how much the board would want for November at this point, because I'm not sure how long Timco may or may not go. It's the two homeowners.
I guess we'll have to decide it at the next meeting then.
Yeah. So those are our last two meetings of the year, believe it or not. But we do have a few out there that I could fit one more on for November. I'm not sure if to put it on or off at the moment. Maybe I'll get a little more detail from Mr. Linus to how much testimony they want to bring to the next meeting. But we'll be in contact with you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, good. So motion to close.
Mr. Chairman, it's Fred Kinsler, IT. I just thought I would suggest one thing. I don't know if Mr. Anderson can chime in as well regarding the November 4th meeting about the notices from Mr. Linus. I could throw up on the screen and share the screen with anybody who's in the public or the board who wants to see the notice for the November 4th meeting. I can do that if you feel appropriate.
Right now?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure people can catch it that quickly, but I do think it's useful that you said that you have it. Can you just say where the public could get that on the township website?
That would be Mr. Gorman to tell them where to get it. I just know I have it and it's been sent to them. But again, even if I flash it up on the screen, it will be in the recorded that can then be seen on our YouTube channel.
Fair enough. I guess it is worth putting it up there, although I would appreciate if you'd make sure that Mr. Gorman has it and can direct people to it if necessary.
He absolutely does have it and can do that. So I'll share my screen so everybody can see it at the moment. So there's the notice that will go out.
Sure. And this information is available on the township website, hillsborough-nj.org. If you search under the departments tab or actually under the boards tab and find the Board of Adjustment, you'll see upcoming agendas for meetings, and this information will be on there at the same time.
Good. Okay, keep it up there. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. And Fred, once we have the vote, just stop the YouTube feed. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Have a good evening, everybody.
9:59 p.m.
Yeah, I don't.
Right.
Everybody take care.
Thank you
You
all.
guys, have a good night.
Oh, Mr. Anderson left. Patrick, let me know tomorrow what